Trump versus China trade war escalates. US slabs 245% tariffs on China. China warns, won't stay silent. Tit for tat, tariffs put world on edge. Trump or China, who will blink first? That is our top focus on 5 Live.
245% additional tariff, massive escalation in US-China trade war. Donald Trump administration has announced a massive 245% tariff on Chinese imports to the United States of America. And these sweeping tariffs are in response to China's retaliation imposing tariffs on US exports to China. China has also put restrictions on procurement of several exports from the United States of America, including Boeing aircraft for Chinese airlines. And Donald Trump, since he's taken an America First policy, it's being taken altogether to a new level, imposing additional tariffs on China. And this latest round of tariff that escalates these tariffs on some goods to 245% is being justified on security grounds, on national security grounds. The United States has accused China of restricting supplies of critical high-tech material that was being exported to the US, and so far in larger quantities. So, for example, China has restricted supply of germanium, antimony, gallium to China, and these are elements that are required. These are very critical military supplies or critical supplies for aerospace, for the American armed forces, and also for the semiconductor industry. So this trade war has just escalated. It's escalated to a new high. China has responded, saying that tariff war that has been initiated by the United States of America, there would be retaliatory action by Beijing. And the action that's been taken by Beijing so far has been described as reasonable and legal. So what does this mean for the US in the times ahead? China, what does it mean for China? What does it mean for India? And what does it mean for the global economy? Because there are several economists who say this is a sure-shot recipe for disaster. It will lead to recession. But has the US war-gamed it in the long run? I'm Gaurav Sawant. We explore. The Donald Trump administration in the United States of America has overnight announced a massive escalation in tariffs imposed on Chinese imports to the United States of America, taking the US-China retaliatory tariff war altogether to a new level. China has accused the US of initiating this tariff war, insisting Beijing's response so far has been reasonable, legal, and aimed at safeguarding Chinese interests. So Trump administration has overnight announced a massive new 245% tariff on Chinese imports to the US on some items, and the sweeping tariffs are in response to Chinese retaliation after the initial round of additional tariffs imposed on China. So China's retaliation includes US exports to China, and China has also put restrictions on procurement of Boeing passenger aircraft for Chinese airlines. Donald Trump's America First policy has led to this massive trade war. Additional tariffs on China are now being justified on national security grounds. The United States has accused China of restricting supplies of critical high-tech material to the US. So information that is being received indicates that China has restricted the supply of gallium, germanium, and antimony, and China has restricted supplies that are very critical for military, aerospace, and semiconductor industry in the United States of America. China has accused the United States of threatening and blackmailing Beijing. China, in a statement, has said they seek dialogue that's based on equality, respect, and mutual benefit.
president has made his position on China quite clear, although I do have an additional statement that he just shared with me in the Oval Office. The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country except they are much larger. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way, they need our money. So the president, again, has made it quite clear that he's open to a deal with China, but China needs to make a deal with the United States of America.
这场关税战是美方发起的。
The tariff war was initiated by the US side, and China took necessary countermeasures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests, as well as international fairness and justice, which are completely reasonable and lawful. China's position has always been clear. There is no winner in a tariff or trade war. China does not want a fight, but it is not afraid of a fight either. If the US truly wants to resolve the issue through dialogue and negotiation, it should stop its practice of maximum pressure and cease with threats and blackmail. Instead, it should engage in talks with China on the basis of equality, mutual respect and reciprocity.
But what does this tariff war mean? What will this tariff war lead to? What does it mean for China? What does it mean for the United States of America? And what does it mean for global economy? My colleague Rahul Kamal spoke exclusively to Martin Wolf, the chief economic commentator at the Financial Times, and he insists that Trump's tariffs are lunacy, utter lunacy, and that the Chinese President Xi Jinping will not buckle under US pressure. Listen in. What do you make of China's policy response to Trump's tariffs? Far from buckling down, Xi Jinping seems determined to fight on. Do you think he has the right, from China's point of view, the right pushback strategy? Who suffers more in the end, China or the United States?
Well, I don't know whether he's right or not, but I thought it was inevitable. China is a very major power. It's a very proud country. It feels very strongly that it was humiliated in the 19th century and it's not going to be humiliated again. So to bow down to a bully like Trump, and clearly he is a bully, will be very humiliating for Mr. Xi, and I think more broadly for the Chinese elite. So I always thought they wouldn't do so. They would resist. They have clearly worked very hard over many years to Trump-proof, if you like, their economy, and I think they will be in reasonable shape to do so. The trade impact will be significant, particularly if in the long run the Americans are able to attack indirect Chinese exports, as I discussed. Direct exports from China to the US are not that huge. They can clearly survive. If they attack all the indirect exports, it would be more significant. But China finally has huge policy room. It can expand demand if it wants to. Public sector debt, government debt is very, very modest. It can clearly borrow more and spend more. It can transfer money to households which need it. It has a weak economy anyway, and that would motivate them, I think, to do these sorts of things. So I think they have a pretty fair degree of maneuver, room for maneuver.
But that seems to be against Xi's economic instinct. While he's a communist, he doesn't seem to be a socialist, and this kind of public welfare, social sector spends, from what he's said and done so far, seem to be against his economic instinct.
Yes, that I think is right, but there's an even more important instinct for survival. And I've just been in China a couple of weeks ago, and they are the technocrats I spoke were very clear that they are thinking about serious stimulus policies, really serious, and Mr. Xi knows very well, given that there's a weak demand already, there's a risk of deflation. He will be told by people that if they allow this to tip them over into a serious deflationary problem, with all the debt problems that will create in the private sector, in the local authority sector, that will be very bad for him. So in the end, I expect the Chinese to be pragmatic. Usually they have been.
So who will be the last man standing, given that there are intense attacks taking place and counterattacks taking place between the US and China? who will blink first? Joining me on this India Today special broadcast to talk more about this 245% tariffs that have been imposed on Chinese goods is Business Today editor Siddharth Zarabi. Siddharth, there were reports with Chinese retaliatory tariffs and restrictions on Boeing aircraft and procurement by Chinese airlines. The US may be forced to reconsider its decision. That was the conversation till yesterday. But clearly, Donald Trump doesn't appear to be backing down, at least as of now. So is this that game of brinkmanship being escalated to another level? Who blinks first?
Well, very clearly, we are in a trade war winter, Gaurav, and this is between, thankfully, just the United States and China, because the rest of the world is paused. But this 245% headline grabbing number, where does this come from? What really lies behind it? The White House said that China faces up to 245%, and some people, some observers have construed this as another 100% add-on to the 145% tariff that was existing. Well, that's not the case. There are certainly items that face 245%, primarily syringes and needles, for example. And then there are various slabs, lithium-ion batteries, which are so crucial to electric mobility and other usages, are at 173%. Why 245? 245 is on account of the fact that these are the clubbed rate of all the existing tariffs. So the base rate, then the rate that prevailed prior to Donald Trump taking office again. Even Joe Biden had imposed some tariffs, and Trump in his first administration had done that. Then the fentanyl tariffs. Then there are sector-specific tariffs, for example, on steel, on aluminium, on automobiles, and then finally the reciprocal trade tariff bombshell of the 2nd of April. When you add that up, it's 245. But it's not uniform 245. That depends on where that basket was, what was the base rate. So it's pretty complicated. For example, books are at 0%, but toys are at 145%.
So what is Donald Trump specifically targeting in China? What is that big message that he's sending out? What is the impact on consumers in the US? What will the impact be on China? These are several issues that the world is grappling with, because reports suggest there is massive disruption already in supply chains, and many Chinese goods are no longer either cheap or readily available in the United States of America.
So this is a battle that is being fought at this stage with tactical responses in mind. In some ways, in trade terms, America straight away escalated this fight into a nuclear battle, really. It did not wait for a conventional arms battle to start. It went ballistic straight away. What has China done? Two actions that show us the calibrated differential response. The first one being by denying Boeing a market in China, which is the world's largest civil aviation market outside of the United States. You are hurting a symbol of American manufacturing. That company has had its own fair share of problems. Will this impact their business? Maybe they will divert it to the other countries, including India, which is a very large buyer. The second bit is the denial of rare earths, which will impact America's high technology sector. But remember, at the heart of it, the battle, the game plan hasn't changed. And we have discussed that previously. The American game plan is very simple. Attack China and reduce its capability in manufacturing, because China has scale which is much higher than the United States. Let me just give you two data points.
Yes.
China produces 20 times the amount of cement that America does, 13 times steel, 3 times cars, and twice that much power. So imagine the differential, and this is what America wants to sort of do away with. The question remains, can Donald Trump in 4 years unwind what took 40 years to happen, the rise of China? The jury is out on that. But in the short term, it's very clear that this is a battle that is being fought very, very hard.
Okay, stay with me for a moment. So you heard Martin Wolf. Rahul Kanwal also spoke to a professor of Chinese history and business at Harvard University, Professor William Kirby, about this ongoing tariff war between the US and China. What's the thinking? Let's listen in to a small excerpt of that interview.
In the belligerence with which Xi Jinping has hit back, he's not come to the negotiating table like Trump said, we'll have a meeting, we'll try and talk things out. Xi doesn't seem interested. Why is that?
Well, I don't think any country could not react to the kind of aggressive tariffs as this near declaration of economic war by the United States on China, at least so it appears at this 145% rate. That does not apply to all goods, for example, and some of the most important goods and most valuable goods are exempt from those tariffs. It's really quite a complex and messy situation. But I don't think President Xi would have had any choice but to respond. And it isn't just President Xi. I think any Chinese leader would have no choice but to respond in some way or other. And I can guarantee you that if India were suddenly hit with 145% tariff increase, Mr. Modi, I think, would be hard-pressed not to respond to this. This is what governments do. They have to respond. They have domestic constituencies. They have to, if there is to be a negotiation, they will want to go in with a stronger rather than weaker hand. And there are, thousands of American businesses in China, millions and millions of Americans who regularly are customers of Chinese goods. These are all constituents in what had been a largely beneficial bilateral economic relationship between the United States and China over the last quarter century.
Will this tariff war lead to an economic decoupling between Beijing and DC, given how intertwined these two economies are? Is that even possible? Is the world likely to be divided into two trading blocs?
Right. I think it is possible. I think it's unlikely, but I think it is possible. These two countries, in many ways, could not be more intertwined in their economies, more mutually reliant one on another in their economies. At the same time, you have a history of U.S.-China relations at times when we were deeply involved, for example, politically and militarily in China in the 1940s, ending with a total cutoff of relations from the early 1950s until the early 1970s, and really until the early 1980s in practical terms. So it is possible to see decoupling, but that was a period of enormous tragedy, we must remember. It's a period when Americans and Chinese fought each other in the utterly needless Korean War. It is a time in which all business contacts were severed, all academic contacts, which had been very robust between American and Chinese universities, were severed. And if we believe that decoupling is somehow to the benefit of either the United States and China, then we actually don't know our history at all.
So there are multiple apprehensions about this tariff war in Siddharth. One of those apprehensions are global fears of recession in the United States of America, problems in China, problems across the world. You've been speaking to your sources both in North Block and South Block in India and in the Capitol Hill and in the United States of America. Has Donald Trump wargamed this? Is this a very dangerous game of Russian roulette that's being played with China just to see who blinks first and who's the last man standing?
At least in terms of the rollout, we perhaps hadn't anticipated or imagined, but this is a script that Donald Trump actually started off in his first term. In some ways, him not coming to power again at that time meant that there was a brief interruption. He's come back now and clearly has upped the ante. With regard to the impact, I just want to quickly draw on the India impact, because in all of this, it is very, very significant to note. The key question is, can the United States decouple from China, reduce its dependence and reclaim its earlier hitherto position several decades ago as the world's #1 manufacturing power? Make no mistake, China is the world's dominant manufacturing superpower, in fact. It cannot do it alone, and that is why the trade deals that are being currently discussed, including with India, amongst the handful of countries along with Korea and Japan, where serious discussions are underway, and this 90-day pause will tell us what will happen to the global economy. If the United States is able to stitch together 7-8 major deals, apart from the smaller ones, because the number of countries, as the US has said, is 75 negotiations. But if it is able to do the big 8-10, including with India and other major manufacturing and economies across the world, it will mean that the United States has created an alliance. Remember, it went to war in Iraq and others with an alliance where it was the primary mover and shaker. In some ways, in trade terms, it will have to have allies along with itself to take on China. And by all reckoning, if you were to total up the GDP of all the major economies in the world, whether it's Australia, Canada, the EU, Japan, Korea, India, everything, that is almost $60 trillion versus China's $18 trillion. So yes, this will take time to pan out, but my money is on the fact that if the United States is able to stitch together an alliance that wants to take on China, and many countries have different issues with China, including India, for example, then I think there might be a very different ending to what seems like a very, very messy affair at this point of time.
It does appear to be messy, but it remains to be seen who has the staying capacity, who is willing to stay in this battle for longer, for long-term goals. Because remember, ultimately, there can only be one victor, either China or America. And China clearly wants to be number one. Should that happen, would that be advantage India or a massive disadvantage for India, given what China has been doing at India's borders, claiming it wants good ties with India despite what happens at the borders? And we'll be tracking that story very closely. Siddharth Zarabi for joining me here on this India Today special. Many thanks. So this US versus China trade war is escalating. On Tuesday, Beijing ordered a halt to Boeing jet deliveries, and this was in response to tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. Donald Trump has since imposed additional tariffs, taking that total 245% on some goods. Now, this trade war has put the world on edge. But who holds the aces in this? And more importantly, like we've been saying, who will blink first? Let's find out.
China has raised the stakes against the US. Beijing has now ordered its airlines not to take any further deliveries of Boeing jets in response to the US decision to impose 245% tariffs on Chinese goods. Beijing has also asked that Chinese carriers halt any purchases of aircraft-related equipment and parts from US companies. China has already halted exports of 6 critical rare earth minerals and magnets which are refined and produced only within its borders. These are needed to make everything from cars, drones, missiles, and semiconductors.
In the face of external uncertainties, China will insist on joining hands rather than throwing punches, tearing down walls instead of building barriers, connecting instead of decoupling. We will continue to expand the circle of trade friends, become a stronger magnet for investment, develop with high quality and open to the outside world at a high level to inject more stability and positive energy into the world economy.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Hanoi in his most direct effort to firm up alliances in an all-out trade war against the US. He heads for Cambodia next, his first trip to the country in 9 years, and then to Malaysia. China had earlier approached India, Australia and even Saudi Arabia to form an axis against the US. All this effort to blunt Donald Trump's trade attack. China refused to blink and hit back with 125%. China and the US enjoy a significantly symbiotic trade relationship. US was China's largest trade partner in 2024 but had a massive trade deficit, burning a $263 billion hole in its budget. The top US exports to China included $16 billion worth of oilseeds and grains, which kept China's poultry business running. Also, as of March 27, China had purchased 22.12 million metric tons of US soya beans for shipment in 2024-25, which ends on August 31st. Other exports included electrical equipment and fuel, both strategic in nature. Machinery, aircraft and parts, plastics and pharma comprise the other top exports. Top imports from China include mobile phones and other gadgets, laptops and appliances, toys, plastic products, prefab materials, textiles and footwear. The world's two largest economies are locked in a bitter battle, with neither side willing to back down. Bureau Report, India Today.
So it's not just tit-for-tat tariffs. China is hitting back at the US by promoting direct sales of luxury goods at significantly lower prices online. From designer handbags to clothes to cosmetics, American TikTok and social media is flooded with Chinese suppliers peddling branded goods for much less.
Even as Donald Trump and Xi Jinping engage in a battle of tariffs on the world stage, something incredible is unraveling on social media. Chinese manufacturers have taken tariffs to heart and have flooded social media sites with exposés of how everything from luxury handbags, high-end sneakers to prefab houses and boats are built in China and at a fraction of the sticker price. This video exposes how $38,000 Hermes bags are made in China for allegedly below $1,400. Here are the details of accessories for uber luxury brands like Chanel, Estée Lauder, Louis Vuitton and Dior being produced for a few dollars on the Chinese assembly line. Another video claims that branded products being sold for hundreds of dollars in upscale showrooms are being built in China for just $6 to $8. This post goes on to claim that the reality of lifestyle footwear brand Birkenstocks being produced at just $10 a piece. The United States of America has imposed 145% tariff on Chinese imports, with China hitting back with 125% tariff. China is also exempt from the 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs.
China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. You know, it's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud people, and President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well, and they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out. They're in the process of figuring it out, but they want to make a deal.
There are also some below-the-belt videos reflecting the deep divisions creeping in between the two big world economies. No big brand has been spared in this online onslaught. The videos have been made in perfect English, targeting the final customer and taking pride in the massive economies of scale in China. So while America is trumpeting its tariff, China is flexing its manufacturing might. Bureau Report, India Today Television.
And news just coming in from the United States of America. US President Donald Trump has slammed the Harvard University. Trump has posted a message on social media saying everyone knows that Harvard has lost its way. They hired from New York and Chicago at ridiculously high salaries and fees two of the worst and most incompetent mayors in the history of our country to teach municipal management and government. These two radical left fools left behind two cities that will take years to recover from their incompetence and evil. This is what Donald Trump writes about the mayors. He then goes on to write, Harvard has been hiring almost all woke, radical left idiots and bird brains who are only capable of teaching failure to students and so-called future leaders. Look just to the recent past at their plagiarizing president who so greatly embarrassed Harvard before the United States Congress. When it got so bad that they just couldn't take it anymore, they moved this grossly inept woman to another position, teaching rather than firing her on the spot. Since then, much else has been found out about her, but she remains in place. Many others, like these leftist dopes, are teaching at Harvard, and because of that, Harvard can no longer be considered even a decent place of learning and should not be considered on any list of world's great universities or colleges. Now, according to US President Donald Trump, he claims Harvard is a joke, teaches hate and stupidity, and should no longer receive federal funds. Thank you for your attention to this matter, is what he goes on to write. It's very rare for a president to diss one of the best known universities in the world that's produced some of the most outstanding thought leaders across the world. But that's US President Donald Trump for you. As Bengal begins its slow journey on the road to recovery after the violence and the arson and the vandalism and the targeting of Hindus by radical Islamists, some who, according to the Bengal government, came from across the border in Bangladesh, the political conflict in the state has intensified. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, she met imams in Bengal today and launched her sharpest attack on the Narendra Modi government, calling the unrest in Murshidabad a pre-planned conspiracy. The TMC has in the past blamed not just central forces, but including the border security force, but also certain other elements of engineering the situation by getting people from across the border, carry out riots, target Hindu homes, and then go back across the border. The BJP hit back and hard, saying, how could this happen? Mamata Banerjee is responsible and the Trinamool Congress for the targeting of Hindus in Bengal. So with both sides trading charges and this blame game, the real challenge actually lies in rebuilding the community, because many Hindus are now afraid to return to Murshidabad. Some are hiding in Malda, some others have crossed over into Jharkhand, and this is not the first time that Hindus have left Bengal. Remember, after the assembly election results too, a large number of people had fled, several to Assam. We get you more in this report.
A semblance of normalcy has returned to large parts of West Bengal's Murshidabad district, but the scars of recent communal violence are still fresh. Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee on Wednesday addressed a gathering of Muslim clerics in Kolkata. She launched a fierce attack on the central government and the BSF, also pointing fingers at the Congress, even as she called the riots a conspiracy.
इसमें बांग्लादेश का हाथ है. अगर हाथ है तो इसको जमींदारी तो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट का है कि बीएसएफ बॉर्डर संभालते हैं, हम नहीं संभालते हैं. मोदी जी के আমি রিকোয়েস্ট করব, দয়া করে লোকটাকে কন্ট্রোল করুন. এন্ড মুর্শিদাবাদ জেলা হলেও সিটটা কিন্তু মালদার মধ্যে পড়ে এবং ইটস এ প্রি প্ল্যান্ড কমিউনাল রাইটস.
Mamata urged the Muslim community to stay calm and not fall into what she called the BJP's trap. She announced 10 lakh rupees compensation to the families of those killed and promised new homes under the Banglar Bari scheme, along with relief for affected shopkeepers.
ফেকটাকে বিজেপির কেক করে দেবেন না, ফেকটাকে ফেক বলে ফেলে দিন, এতে উত্তেজিত হবেন না. মনে রাখবেন, আপনি উত্তেজিত হলে আপনারা হারবেন, আর আপনারা যদি শান্ত থাকেন আপনারা জিতবেন.
The BJP mounted its own counter-offensive. Led by leader of opposition Subhendu Adhikari, the BJP MLAs held a rally in Kolkata, holding posters of the violence and dubbing the day Hindu Martyrs' Day.
सेंट्रल एजेंसी का इन्वेस्टिगेशन और NIA के हालत बहुत खराब है. सेंट्रल फोर्स को कोऑपरेशन नहीं कर रहा था.
और सर आज नेताजी ने सीएम,
अरे वो छोड़िए, उसका बात छोड़िए. जो हिंदू धर्म को गंदा धर्म कहता है, सीएम नहीं है, वो खुद गंदा है.
A team of the National Human Rights Commission will visit Murshidabad to probe incidents of Hindus being targeted and the killing of Har Gobindo Das and his son Chandan Das.
इस तरीके की नफरत, और वो भी यदि सरकार के नुमाइंदों की मौजूदगी में लोगों की हत्या हो रही है, तो स्थितियां भयावह हैं, बर्बर हैं, खतरनाक हैं. भारत के अंदर भारत के नागरिकों को अगर अपने प्राण बचाने के लिए रिफ्यूज लेना पड़ रहा है, तो हम समझ सकते हैं कि प्रशासन कहीं ना कहीं फेल हुआ है. इस कारण हमने ये निर्णय लिया है कि मानवाधिकार आयोग की एक टीम वहां जाएगी, इस घटना की जांच करेगी.
As the TMC and BJP trade accusations, on the ground, stories are of loss, grief, and a slow road to recovery. Bureau Report, India Today.
And the Supreme Court is to resume hearing on the Waqf Amendment Act case tomorrow. There are 73 petitions in the Supreme Court challenging the Waqf Amendment Act. The Supreme Court is likely to pass an interim order. That is expected. There were some who sought a stay on the Waqf Amendment Act. Will that come tomorrow? That remains to be seen. The Supreme Court is to pass an interim order on multiple issues, and especially three. Issue number one, should and can Waqf properties be denotified? Issue number two, the role of collector or the district magistrate or the commissioner, is that restricted? Is he a fact-finding body, or will he give a decision? And can and should non-Muslims be part of the Waqf board? I want to quickly cut across to India Today's legal editor Nalini Sharma, joining us with the latest on this big story. Nalini, 73 petitions in court, lot of arguments made. Take us through some of the prominent points and counterpoints that were made and observations of the Supreme Court, Nalini.
Well, Gaurav, the viewers should know that the Supreme Court, in fact, was very keen on passing the order today itself. They had identified three main concerns on which several questions were even raised to the central government through Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, who was representing the centre before the Supreme Court three-judge bench. What were these three main concerns that the Supreme Court had regarding the Act? Number one was regarding denotification of these Waqf bodies. Now, according to these acts, that any body that is not officially registered as a Waqf property is going to be denotified once the Act is brought into force. The question that the court had is that any property that has been recognized as a Waqf property by the court, whether it be Waqf by user or Waqf by deed, can that not be denotified, at least for now, till the time the court is hearing the matter? That was the first question that they asked the central government. The second question they asked the central government was regarding the role of the collector. Now, what is happening according to the Act is that the collector is given the duty of holding an inquiry as to whether a particular property is a Waqf property or a government property. Now, during the time that this inquiry is going on, it is said in the Act that this property cannot be considered to be a Waqf property in that interim period. So the court has questioned whether or not this proviso, where this in the interim period the property is not considered to be Waqf property, should this be allowed to continue, or should they stay this particular provision? The third and the most important that the Supreme Court has asked is regarding the inclusion of non-Muslim members into the Waqf boards and the Central Waqf Council. The Supreme Court has said that they should be limited to two, and although the Solicitor General has given his statement on record that it will be limited to two, the court has also said that this should only be ex-officio members and not any of the other members. So on these three aspects, the Solicitor General has sought some time to place his arguments before the Supreme Court tomorrow. He's requested them to not pass the interim order today. That request has been accepted. At 2 p.m. tomorrow, the government will get some time to place their arguments on these aspects, and then the Supreme Court will decide whether there'll be a stay on some aspects of the Act or not, and whether the Act will be allowed to be enforced in its entirety or not.
So there were several pertinent points that were raised, let's take this point by point. There was one issue about the court made an observation about a 15th century or a 16th century or a 17th century Waqf property or a place of worship which may not have documents. That remains Waqf property, that remains a place of worship. Did the court make an observation on that? And what happens to a property that has since been declared a protected monument?
So, Gaurav, the first part of the question that you raised will be tackled by the Supreme Court in the first point that I stated as to whether or not such properties should be denotified. Now, the concern of the petitioners was that how Waqf by user actually works is that there are no official deeds in place or documents in place that recognize that property as a Waqf property. It's considered to be a Waqf property by virtue of the fact that it's been used for Waqf purposes for several years. So should such properties be denotified or not is the main question that the Supreme Court was considering, because that was one of the biggest points of objection that even the petitioners had raised, saying that there are so many old properties that have been Waqf properties by virtue of the fact that they've been used as Waqf properties, and it's not possible to find the documents of all these monuments and masjids that have been functioning from the 14th or the 15th or the 16th century. The Chief Justice agreed with him, and the Chief Justice did say that it's not possible to find these documents. So in that case, whether or not the court can intervene and the court can step in and take take matters into their own hands and assure that there is some sort of a balanced interim order that's passed. So neither of the two sides, neither of the two parties feel like it's tilted in their favor, and at the same time, the court is also handling the matter so that the hearing can go on and the matter can be decided in its entirety as soon as possible.
Keep tracking that story, Nalini. I will come back to you for more. There's more breaking news that's coming in regarding the situation in West Bengal. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs will visit Bengal, is what sources are telling India Today. BJP MP Soumitra Khan has demanded that the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs should visit Murshidabad, the centre of targeting of Hindus, as the BJP puts it. Soumitra Khan has written a letter to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs chairperson Radha Mohan Das Agrawal. He wrote that the committee is going to visit the state soon to assess the situation on ground in Bengal. Should they come, and in such a situation, the committee should also send a delegation to Murshidabad so that the reality on ground can be ascertained. He said that the committee should also call the state's Director General of Police and the Superintendent of Police of Murshidabad so that a detailed report can be sought about the investigation that has been carried out so far in this case. Listen in.
मिस्टर राधा मोहन अग्रवाल जी को मैंने लेटर दिया हूँ, जहाँ पश्चिम बंगाल आइए, आपका नेतृत्व में हम लोग सब मुर्शिदाबाद जाना पड़ेगा और पश्चिम बंगाल का पुलिस डीजीपी एंड मुर्शिदाबाद एसपी को आप लोकसभा में बुलाइए। इन्वेस्टिगेशन में कितने आगे बढ़ा, कितने अरेस्ट हुआ और बार बार एक घटना पश्चिम बंगाल में हिंदू का ऊपर क्यों हो रहा है, इसके इन्वेस्टिगेशन करने के लिए और इसमें आगे ना हो, उसलिए मैंने राधा मोहन जी को चिट्ठी दिया है एज ए स्टैंडिंग कमेटी मेंबर ऑफ द होम अफेयर्स।
And the Bengal BJP chief Shrikant Majumdar is at the BJP Bengal police headquarters. He's reached the police headquarters to talk to the police about the violence that has taken place and the targeting of Hindus in Bengal. The West Bengal BJP is seeking a meeting with the state DGP. Listen in.
By them, the call for riot was given from the loudspeaker of the masjid. If BJP comes into power and this type incident happen, we will ban masjid or any other religion campus which will be used in case of provoking the riots in any area of West Bengal. हो सकता है अंसारुम बांग्ला से लेकर जमात से लेकर सब यहाँ पे एक्टिव हो सकते हैं और ममता बनर्जी अलाउ करती है लगातार 5 सालों तक इनकी एक्टिविटी चलाने के लिए। पीएफआई का भी एक्टिविटी मुर्शिदाबाद में थी उस समय, आपको जैसे मैंने बताया, अभी भी वीडियो अवेलेबल है कि पीएफआई वाज एक्टिव देयर, पीएफआई ऑर्गेनाइज्ड ए कैंप देयर एंड द सेरेमोनियल ending ceremony and at the ending ceremony of that camp, the TMC local MLA Maninul Islam, he was present, and when the PFI was banned throughout the country, lots of people were arrested, those are related to PFI, but no one in the state of West Bengal was arrested by the West Bengal police. So that's why indirect indulgence is there from the administration of the state. नहीं, वो वोट बैंक अपीसमेंट करने के लिए गए हैं, उन्होंने तो अपना रास्ता क्लियर कर दिया, उन्होंने पहले ही बता दिया था कि ये दुधेल गाय है, मिल्किंग काउ है। सो जो कहा उनके भाषण में अगर मैं बोलूं तो अगर जो गाय दूध देती है उसकी लाद भी अच्छा है। प्रॉब्लम है कि दूध और खीर वो खा रहे हैं, उनके भतीजे खा रहे हैं, लाद हम लोग खा रहे हैं, हिंदू खा रहे हैं। तो दूध पी रहे हैं उनके भतीजे और लाद हिंदू, कॉमन हिंदू, गरीब हिंदू, वो लाद खा रहे हैं।
कब तक वेट करेंगे सुकांत यहाँ पे?
जब तक वो नहीं आएंगे। हमारे पास तो उपाय नहीं है। बंगाल में तो डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है, बंगाल में कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को मानने वाला नहीं है कोई।
इसी को थोड़ा डिटेल्स में बता दीजिए। आज आपका भवानी भवन आने का क्या कारण हुआ?
देखिए, आज सुबह 5 बजे लगभग 8 विक्टिम और 1 बच्चे मालदा रिफ्यूजी कैंप, जो मालदा में वैष्णव नगर कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी असेंबली के अंदर पाललालपुर स्कूल में, पाललालपुर गांव में चल रही थी लास्ट 3 दिनों से। वहां से लोग रवाना होकर कलकत्ता आए हैं। कलकत्ता में बैठकर पूरे पश्चिम बंगाल के लोगों को बताने के लिए कि क्या हुआ था मुर्शिदाबाद में, क्योंकि मुझे लगता है कि अभी भी कलकत्ता के जो इंटेलेक्चुअल पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं उनको पूरा मालूम नहीं कि क्या हुआ था मुर्शिदाबाद में। इसलिए वो लोग आए हैं अपनी आप बीती बताने के लिए। उनके घर लूट लिए गए, उनको मारा पीटा गया, इज्जत लूटने की कोशिश की गई। किसी भी तरीके से वो सेंट्रल फोर्सेस की सहायता से भाग पाए। 2 लोगों को मर्डर कर दिया गया, हरगोविंद दास, चंदन दास, दोनों को मर्डर कर दिया गया। आज इस स्थिति में ये लोग बैठे हुए हैं। हम भी आए हैं कि डीजी के साथ मिलकर ये अपने दुख दर्द सारा कुछ बताएंगे। सीएम तो मिलते नहीं यहाँ पे, सीएम नहीं मिलेंगे, तो इसलिए हमने डीजी के पास ही आए हैं। हम लोग
डीजी को अभी तक इन्फॉर्म किया गया है? आप लोग
इन लोगों ने इन्फॉर्म किया। हमने पुलिस के यहाँ पे उपस्थित जितने भी अफसर है, आला अफसर है, सबको हमने इन्फॉर्म किया कि आप डीजी को इन्फॉर्म करिए कि वी आर हियर, माई सेल्फ along with तापस रॉय सीनियर.
And let's quickly cut across to India Today's Rajesh Saha now joining us live from the police headquarters on this big story. Rajesh, as far as the Bengal BJP is concerned, they want to draw national attention to the targeting of Hindus. Now, this effort to meet the DGP, what is their strategy? What is their game plan? What is their plea?
Well, you know, the State Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee had already a meeting with the Imams of West Bengal in Netaji Indoor Stadium today, where the Chief Minister said that outsiders, especially Bangladeshis, were brought from Bangladesh and other states in Bengal to create rakas and to make violence in Murshidabad. But state BJP believes that is not the reality, that is not true. So BJP State President Shukanto Mojumdar, along with the state BJP leadership, has brought 11 victims who have been affected by the violence in Murshidabad to to West Bengal Police Headquarters, which is Bhavani Bhavan in Kolkata, to meet West Bengal Police Chief, the DGP Rajiv Kumar. And Shukanto Mojumdar wants the DGP to hear the truth, the reality, whatever they have experienced directly from the victims who have experienced the violence in Murshidabad in last 4 to 5 days. And after arriving at West Bengal Police Headquarters, Shukanto Mojumdar found that the door is locked and Kolkata Police has made a corridor over here to stop BJP team, and they have been already stopped by Kolkata Police in front of the State Police Headquarters main gate. And after that, Shukanto Mojumdar had a conversation with Kolkata Police, but police told Shukanto Mojumdar that the DGP Rajiv Kumar is not present over here right now. He is busy in his work. But Shukanto Mojumdar is not willing to leave that place without meeting State Police DGP Rajiv Kumar. After that, State Bengal BJP President Shukanto Mojumdar is waiting with the 11 victims of Murshidabad violence in front of the main gate of Bengal Police Headquarters, Bhavani Bhavan. Right now, he is still waiting to meet Bengal DGP, but DGP is not over here. As per the sources, DGP was in Murshidabad since last 4 days. He was monitoring the situation. He was overseeing the situation, sitting in Murshidabad himself. So DGP is not present over here. But Shukanto Mojumdar has said that he will not leave that place without meeting West Bengal Police DGP Rajiv Kumar with the 11 victims of Murshidabad.
Okay, keep tracking that story. I will come back to you for more. Rajesh Saha reporting on Shukanto Majumdar sitting with the victims of the Murshidabad violence outside the DGP's office in Kolkata. I want to move on to the other big story that's coming in. Major reaction from the Congress party president on the Enforcement Directorate charge sheet against Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi in the National Herald case. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge has said, and I quote, "There is nothing in this case. Referring to National Herald, the newspaper, he said it was shut down for some time due to financial troubles. Sonia Gandhi tried to revive it with loans and donations. Now they say that it is wrong to take a loan. The BJP is working against the law. What is wrong, and we will prove it. Our protest will be held nationwide, and we want to tell the people that we are being troubled unnecessarily, unquote. The Congress party has carried out a series of protests, not just in the national capital, but across the states in the country. Let's listen into Mallikarjun Kharge. I'll get you more.
तो ये उनको डरा के रखने के लिए वो कोशिश कर रहे हैं. ये बीजेपी कानून छोड़ के काम कर रही है. ये इसके लिए हम डट के मुकाबला करेंगे और जो चीज़ गलत है उसको हम गलत साबित करके रहेंगे.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has hit out at Pakistan. Speaking at an event in Gujarat, the External Affairs Minister slammed Pakistan's role in promoting terrorism, calling out Islamabad's double dealing in Afghanistan and its continued bad habits. He pinpointed the role of Pakistan in the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, insisting that was the turning point from where relations between India and Pakistan went south and never recovered. The External Affairs Minister's remarks come days after 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. A key plotter, Captain Tahavvur Hussain Rana of the Pakistan Army, was extradited to India by the United States of America. So, the External Affairs Minister, he's repeatedly exposed Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. He's gone to the extent of saying that Pakistan, the DNA of Pakistan, it has deceit and it has bigotry. Listen in.
India has changed. I wish I could say Pakistan has changed. They unfortunately are in many ways continuing the bad habits. They are continuing a very negative way of approaching India. And what has happened is today, I think, when I look back, I would say the 26/11 Mumbai terrorist attack, I would regard it in many ways as the turning point. I think that was when Indian public opinion across political parties, average Indians said, this is now too much. The country cannot accept this kind of behavior from a neighbor. Now, I think that feeling was very, very strong in society. It may not have been entirely understood at that time by the government of the day. That's a different matter.
And the tragedy remains that Pakistan has taken absolutely no action against the perpetrators of 26/11 Mumbai attacks. But then Pakistan hasn't taken any action against the perpetrators of the Parliament attack, the Pulwama attack, the Pathankot attack, the Sanjuan military station attack, a series of Pakistan state-sponsored terror attacks in India. And we'll track that story. That is all I have for you on 5 Live this evening. Many thanks for watching.